Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to present EURAXESS North America today here to UConn. Okay, so as I've said during this sort of long-winded introduction, my colleague, Dr. Daria Buchner-Karajan, she and I together are the whole team of EURAXESS North America. So we're based in Washington, D.C., but we're tasked with the mandate of promoting European research and collaboration and funding opportunities throughout all of North America. So in a typical year, every month or two, we'll be traveling to a new city or state, not just staying in our hometown in Washington, D.C. So we have a busy year ahead. We're planning our 2024 right now, which is why I say we'd like to be in touch and figure out when and how we can be useful. With that said, I think of today's info session as a real primer on EU funding and collaboration opportunities and all the services that are available to you. So we'll jump right in. So we mentioned the PDF. I've actually put it up in advance just so that you don't have to worry about copying and pasting or taking notes too closely. So feel free just to visit that short URL at the bottom there or scanning that QR code, and you'll just get a PDF version of this exact presentation that I'm delivering live right now. And yeah, I'll just give 1 second if anyone wants to look at that bit.ly URL. The case matters, and there's going to be an underscore there between UConn and EU. But that said, that'll take you to the EURAXESS North America web post for this. So our bread and butter is Horizon Europe. It's promoting the European Union's framework program for research innovation. So unlike a lot of countries or regions, the EU funds and organizes research innovation on a 7-year basis. So the current program is called Horizon Europe. It runs from 2021 through the end of 2027. You may hear people refer to it as Horizon in short. Part of that reason is because the predecessor to this was called Horizon 2020, running from 2014 through the end of 2020. So we're approaching the middle of this 7-year framework program. And what's nice about this current one we're in is that they've organized it into sort of easy to digest pillars that more or less describe the differences in the structure. So pillars 1 and 2 are the main components that we promote. For pillar 1, called Excellent Science, we mainly promote ERC grants and Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions, some of which are fellowships, others of which are exchanges and trainings. You'll see these circled here right now. All of these in pillar 1 are bottom up and with no predefined categories or priorities. You as the researcher, and in most cases for the most popular grants and fellowships, is an individual researcher. There's certain things for groups, but the most popular ERC grants, for example, and Marie Skłodowska-Curie Action Fellowship, are for individual researchers to design their own project, their own proposal. You have to somehow define it so that the appropriate set of evaluators can evaluate it. So you have to define which field and subfield it's in, but you don't have to meet any pre-existing terms or wider goals, unlike Pillar 2. Pillar 2 is more top-down. The European Commission defines some global challenges, and you as a group of principal investigators, international group of principal investigators, will propose the solution, and then obviously each open call will be awarded to a group of PIs. So these are organized into 6 different clusters. You'll see that we call them cluster and not category because some of them really have some categories that you wouldn't normally put together: food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and the environment. That's a mouthful. That's its own cluster number 6 within Pillar 2. So if you hear me referring or you're on EU websites and you see references to the pillars, sometimes it's Roman numerals, sometimes it's just traditionally written out numbers. Pillars 1 and 2 are within Horizon Europe, and Horizon Europe is the current 7-year framework program for research and innovation. So I think today it's a lot of master's, PhD, and a couple postdocs in attendance. So I think what will be most of interest is Pillar 1. And in this case, for the majority of you, it would be for you to design your own research project proposal to go to Europe and carry that out. And I'll have some infographics that lay all of this out. If you are a more experienced researcher and you're interested in being a principal investigator in joining a European and international consortia, this could be where some of the open calls under Pillar 2 are of interest to you. There are a few things to take note of, one of which is a third country. So the US is clearly not an EU member state, and it's also not what's called an associated country. This means countries that have negotiated with the EU to pay into the budget of Horizon Europe and then get treated like they were an EU member state. So we all know that with Brexit, it went from 28 countries to 27. So there's 27 EU member states. And then currently, I believe the number is 17 countries that are, most of them are in the European neighborhood, They've negotiated in, they pay a certain budget to get access. And then in simple terms, it's as if they were an EU member state. So you have countries like Turkey, Tunisia, the United Kingdom, which left the EU. All of these are associated to Horizon Europe, which means for Pillar 2, it could be one PI from Greece, an EU member state, one PI from Turkey, and then one PI from Ireland, and that can be the consortia. There's a minimum of 3, one of which has to be an EU member state, 2 of which have to be an EU member state or associated country. And then all the other countries that are not on this list of, it's currently 44 countries, are what are called third countries. And currently the US is a third country. So for Pillar 2, for the most part, outside of the health cluster, cluster number 1 within Pillar 2, there is not funding involved. So this would be where you would be looking internally within the US, within your university or other like NSF, NIH type awards to get funding. I say this in interest of full disclosure. In certain other cases, if UConn were in an associated country, it would be available for funding. That said, I think this is just a really nice general overview because for Pillar 1, it shouldn't matter so much whether the US is associated or not. The idea here is that you as individual researchers would be applying and then going to Europe for a certain number of years, depending on which one you're applying to. Over the 7 years, it's 95.5 billion euro that have been earmarked. At today's exchange rate, that's over 103 billion US dollars. So divide by 7 to get an average annual amount of money that goes towards Horizon Europe. And I'll give figures on, for example, Pillars 1 and Pillars 2 specifically. So about us at EURAXESS, as I mentioned before, it's Gary and I covering all of the US and Canada. We and our colleagues at EURAXESS worldwide around the world provide information and support to researchers of any nationality, so not just Americans here, wishing to pursue their research careers in Europe or stay connected to Europe. So we were originally founded before Gary and I joined the project. EURAXESS, the original aim was to help European researchers based in the US stay connected to Europe. It's since expanded, it's been fleshed out a lot more, and now the idea is to promote Europe as an attractive research destination to researchers of all nationalities in our region, but then also help researchers who want to stay where they are further develop their connections to Europe. So a large part of this is through the mobility of researchers. Like I mentioned, Pillar 1 is for individual researcher mobility in most parts. And I've just mentioned so far that it's 44 countries that have either are EU member states or they're associated to Horizon Europe. They get treated like EU member states. And therefore, you can think of it as sort of a single borderless area when it comes to all things research. And as we are EURAXESS worldwide, there are 8 other what we call hubs. This is the name of the EURAXESS offices or the EURAXESS presence outside of Europe. So we're in North America, Latin America and the Caribbean, Africa, India, China, ASEAN, Japan, Korea, and and Australia and New Zealand. And everything we do is free of charge. So that's why I really am encouraging you to email us, contact us on social media, visit our website. If you have any questions, let us know. If we don't have the answer for you, we will get it with enough time. So I shared the URL to the North America page earlier in the chat, along with all of our social media channels. Just to give you a quick overview, there's a horizontal bar at the top of our website. I'm just going to give you a quick top-down rundown here. Our main service is a jobs and funding portal. I'll actually go back here for a moment. This is a human-moderated free portal where you can actually post opportunities even within the United States for jobs. This does include some private sector jobs. It is completely open. But that said, you'll largely find PhD and postdoc opportunities. It's not just jobs and degree programs, but it's also funding. So this is where you'll find, for example, posts for those Pillar 1 bottom-up mobility fellowships and grants that I mentioned before. So you would see in a big list of an interactive database with tags and filters that you can filter on and off. You'll see the ERC grants. You'll see those Marie Skłodowska actions, fellowships. And then in parallel to that is a partnering tool and a hosting database. So for all 4 of these, it's the same interface, just different databases behind them. The hosting database is where, and I have some more slides that will show this shortly. You might know the country you're interested in, and we saw that in the chat. There's a lot of interest, for example, in the Netherlands and Germany. So let's say those 2 countries. You can go on the EURAXESS website, click the hosting portal, filter those 2 countries only, and all of a sudden, hundreds of options will whittle down to, let's just say 20 for the sake of this example. And then you can type in your research field or check it on a predetermined list. The list will get whittled down a little further. This is where you can find universities in Europe that want to host you because they know you'll be applying to these European Union funds, which are portable and attached to you. So if you get accepted into one of these grants or fellowships that I'm talking about, and you decide that X university is not for you after 6 months, you can take that grant or that fellowship and change your host institutes. So this is where the universities are quite interested because the acceptance rate in these is less than 20%. They're very prestigious and they don't have to pay. The EU is paying your salary. So it's really win-win-win. The EU gains some great talent. You get an opportunity, you are funded, and the university gets you without having to pay for you, so to say. And it's really low risk to you because if you are one of the fortunate ones accepted, in that case, it travels with you. So you don't have to worry about being locked into a host institute or a program that you're not interested in. We also have a lot of career development tools. These really exploded during the pandemic where everything went online. Everything's archived here. So I would encourage you to go and click around and look at some of those tools. And then next up, we have information and assistance. So I mentioned there's 9 EURAXESS worldwide hubs outside of Europe, but within every European country, there is a EURAXESS national portal and then service centers. So the national portal refers to the country-specific websites of EURAXESS, and the aim of the EURAXESS colleagues we have in Europe is to help reduce the friction in moving to a new country. So this is useful if you have a researcher, let's say, from the Netherlands moving to Belgium. They may be moving 20 miles, not a huge move, but they are crossing an international border and in a new country with a new system. They would contact the EURAXESS presence in Belgium and get information like, how do I open up a bank account? I'm a researcher. I really want to hit the ground running and just continue my research career. And these service centers are tasked with answering those questions for you. The same benefit and dynamic applies to you as a researcher coming from the US or coming from any country outside of Europe, but with the added benefit of they'll provide you guidance on visa matters. And just as a recap, yeah, Gary and I are 2 of the colleagues that we're in the North America hub and we're part of EURAXESS Worldwide. So there's the European side of the project, which has over 600 service centers. And then there's the EURAXESS Worldwide hubs, of which there's 9. So I mentioned the national portals. I just want to show you here the 43 that exist. So this is a mixed list of the 27 EU member states. And then in the screenshot here, it's 16 countries that were or have been associated to Horizon Europe. So I do have a sort of asterisk or 2 to say here. One is that Switzerland is not currently an associated country. It was previously to the last 7-year program called Horizon 2020. And as a part of that, they still have a EURAXESS presence. So if you're interested in Switzerland, there are Swiss government resources on funding and things like that, but they are not currently an associated country. And the United Kingdom will be an associated country starting on January 1st of next year. So we just have to wait a month and everything is sort of back to normal when it comes to research for the UK, you could say. And I leave here, I'll go through this quite quickly, but because you can access a PDF of this presentation, you don't have to worry about reading everything in close detail. These are the 18 categories that most of the national portals will provide expert information on. And again, everything they offer is free. So some of them have interactive web sort of quizzes that will give you answers to the questions you have. Other ones will just have detailed PDF guides. At the end of the day, there are people you can contact, both institutional email addresses and then specific individuals' email addresses. They all speak English and they're all quite reactive and proactive. So you'll find they'll get back to you within a couple of business days. And in many cases, they're happy to set up Zoom meetings as well. So I'll just also leave you here with a screenshot of what the portal itself looks like. I mentioned that our main activity is this jobs and funding portal. So you'll see that if you go onto the EURAXESS North America website, you can go to jobs and funding and then search for job offers. You can also post job offers, and this could be including UConn staff could post some opportunities there. And this is where I would encourage Kay and colleagues to post that, obviously do a little bit of research, liaise with me more, but this is where you could post that UConn is interested in receiving paid fellows from the EU who want to come to the US to do the same type of fellowship. So we'll continue to be in touch. Now, I want to move on to slightly more detailed presentations on Pillar 1 of Horizon Europe. So I mentioned bottom-up researcher mobility, ERC grant schemes. This is the first of those 2 that I mentioned. So there will be a few slides here. You don't have to worry about absorbing this in too much detail, and I will have a lot of graphics and text that is a bit intimidating at first blush. But here, these are the 5 different grants that the European Research Council offers. And you'll see in parentheses, more or less based on the number of years post-PhD that you are or will be, you clearly fall into one category or the other. I would really, again, recommend the YouTube playlists that I shared in a link earlier, as well as going on the ERC website and looking at our past recorded webinars and info sessions, because there are a lot of fine details that might change the math on this for you. One of which is there are a number of ways that you can change or postpone your timeline for a number of years post-PhD. So if you have taken have taken or will take maternity or paternity leave, there are formulas specific to that that will allow you to change the math and say how many years post-PhD you are. I don't think this will be the case for most of us, but if you're in a country and you've had to serve obligatory national service, there's a formula for subtracting that from your time. And then one novelty that started this year as opposed to previous years is that the starting date for being post-PhD is now the date of your PhD defense. Whereas in the past, it was based on your PhD award date. And because of differences in different universities and different countries, a way of more or less unifying this across different customs was to make it the PhD defense date. So I'll put up some currency conversions here and some of the benefits. I'm going to start with the starting grants. So this is the most popular in numbers. All of these have an acceptance rate, if I'm not mistaken, of less than 20%. Definitely the starting grants is around 17%. So this is $1.6 million over a period of 5 years. You have to spend 50% of your time on the project. And if you look at these graphics, you'll see as you sort of go around in the circle and up in career experience level, the amount of time you have to spend on the project goes down to as low as 30%. And then in all of these, you have to spend at least half of your time in Europe. I say this in an encouraging sense because many researchers may wish to maintain their affiliation with UConn or maintain partial residency in the United States. So if both parties are happy with this, your host institute in Europe and UConn or whichever university in the US or any country in the world you're affiliated with, you can sort of wear two hats. I will mention that the minimum 50% of you as the principal investigator time working in an EU member state or associated country does also refer to physical presence. Gary and I have seen a lot of researchers ask us questions, and in certain scenarios where we don't have the exact answer, we'll reach out to national contact points or NCPs who are based in Europe because there are no ERC or Marie Curie national contact points in the United States. And for example, there have been some that their universities in Europe are eager to have them, and they say, we'll let you work remote. You can spend all your time in the US. And just to make everything fair and consistent across all researchers and all people, that does include physical time. So I just want to make that clear in case you have an idea of being able to spend less than half your time in Europe because your university is fine with it. It won't work for the purpose of maintaining the grant. If you continue to go around on this, consolidator grant is for those who are 7 to 12 years post PhD. The amount of money you get goes up to €2 million or $2.2 million. Advanced grants, you have to have a significant track record over the last 10 years. You get 2.7 million. And again, in each of these 3 steps, you see a 10% drop in the amount of time you have to spend on the project. And then synergy grants are not for individual researchers, but rather 2 to 4 PIs, one of which, for example, could remain at UConn and not have to be physically present in Europe or have a European host institute. And that's $10.8 million with about 1/3 of the time on the project. And then I will just go over this one quickly. The proof of concept grant is for those who have already been ERC grantees. So come back to me once you've successfully gotten your starting consolidator, advanced, or synergy grant, and then let's talk about supporting your application for a proof of concept grant. What makes the ERC grants really exciting is that the only criterion is scientific excellence. So it's not like certain other funding programs where you might have to justify getting certain results or feasibility or being able to prove that it'll work in the private market. It's just scientific excellence. And then we'll go through this slide quickly, but I just want to leave a bullet point so that you can access the PDF of this presentation afterwards with the 1-sentence description of what all of these grants are, as well as their official acronym, because you'll see the acronyms listed in a lot of the technical documents, and it can help you process this a little bit better. And let me look here. The acceptance rates for last year's starting grants were approximately 16%. I believe the most recent round was 17%. So these are extremely competitive. I would really encourage you to be in touch with European-based national contact points who will provide some support for your application. The US is a leading country in the number of third country statistics. So you'll see that the total number of grants actually outpaces almost 4 times the number 2 country, Canada. So you're in good company when it comes to Americans and other people of other nationalities that have applied from the US to go to Europe as the principal investigators on these grants. And this is consistent across the starting, consolidator, and advanced grants. So I just say this as a fact that hopefully gives some encouragement and will motivate you to apply. So I mentioned the national contact points within Europe. I can share a link after I finish this presentation on how to contact those NCP, how to find them and contact them. You don't need any excuse to contact the NCP in any given country. So if a lot of people in the audience today are interested in the Netherlands and Germany, for example, go on the official EU website, find NCPs in those countries, and then contact them. There will be multiple for larger countries like Germany. And then the ERC has what's called the European Research Council Executive Agency. They have extremely well-made YouTube videos with tips, how-tos, including from past grantees and past evaluators that they call ERC classes. So if you go to the ERC's YouTube page, or you just go to your favorite search engine and type in quotation marks ERC classes YouTube, you will find that probably is your first result. And then we have our own EURAXESS North America playlist where we've hosted info sessions, given presentation, and then had European-based experts present on this, including, I believe 2 years ago, we hosted an American ERC grantee who was successful in getting a grant to go to Italy and was talking about her application process and her experience in the middle of her project. I'll now jump to the other major bottom-up program within Pillar 1, which are the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. Actions because some of them are fellowships, other ones are not fellowships. So actions is the catch-all word. And you'll also hear to this sometimes referred to by its shorter name, which is the previous name of just Marie Curie. So the technical long name is Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions, or MSCA. So it's $7.1 billion over these 7 years. Again, it's in this category of Pillar 1, or excellent science. It has worldwide geographic coverage. So what makes this different from the ERC is that the ERC is for people to move within Europe or from outside of Europe to Europe. But basically, at the end of the day, the research is being carried out in those 27 EU member states and then 16 associated countries. The Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions can go in either direction. So this is where there very well may be people doing postdoctoral fellowships at UConn and certainly in other universities in the US for a period of 1 to 2 years. And then they have a 1-year mandatory return phase to Europe. So I think for everyone in the audience today, the opportunity to promote here is to apply to a postdoctoral fellowship in Europe. Again, you're not limited to just those 27 EU member states. And quite similar to the ERC, but slightly different, the evaluation criteria are excellence, but then also impact, quality, and efficiency of the implementation. So you do have to explain and justify how you will implement efficiently and what the quality of it is. And I'll leave here really brief individual half sentences on the descriptions of each one. The most popular are these postdoctoral fellowships. So it's basically, you can think of it as career development for postdocs. And then I have a small graphic here that will just explain how to find vacancies or opportunities. So for these postdoctoral fellowships, you can contact any European university and ask if they are willing to host you. But then those that already know about this and are interested in hosting people generally will post vacancies on the EURAXESS portal, basically saying, we're researching XYZ topics. Please contact these PIs if you would like to partner with them and have us be your host institute. And then we will support you in your application. You, as the researcher, apply to the European Commission. And if you are granted it, you apply with a letter of support from that European Host Institute. And if you are successful in your application, you then move forward, enroll, and begin your research job. And I have this graphic that just does explain the difference between the fellowships for the MSDA PF, for the postdoctoral fellowships. So again, any nationality, whether you're in Europe or out of it, can go to Europe. And again, I'm talking about the wider 43 countries in Europe here. And then the global fellowships are in reverse. So in Europe, you can go any third country you want, like the US, for 1 to 2 years, plus 1 year back in Europe. Now, you have some additional resources for MSCA that you don't have for ERC. Just like the ERC, you have MSCA national contact points within Europe, but then there's also a Marie Curie Alumni Association. So this is for previous fellow alumni of these fellowships. And there's a North America chapter. The current chair of this chapter, elected to a 2-year term over the summer, is based at Harvard. They cover the US and Canada. And basically, it also includes current fellows. They constantly advise each other with things like, a lot of these are Europeans who have questions on US taxes and state level taxes, federal taxes, things that European-based national contact points might not necessarily be able to provide expertise on. So you have a built-in support network, but they're open to all. So I would encourage you to also contact the MCAA NA chapter if you're in the US and interested in potentially doing the European fellowship. There are global fellows throughout the US. So whether or not they're members of the North America chapter of the MCAA, you can contact individual fellows. They're oftentimes really glad to promote and engage you and talk about their experience with the fellowship. And then just like we have a playlist for the ERC grants, we also have one where we've done MSBA info sessions. So regardless of Pillar 1 and also including the wider EURAXESS services, I would say there are a few action items that I'll explain in the next coming slides. If you opted into our mailing list, like I said, you'll get a confirmation email today or tomorrow when I import you into our subscriber list. If not, if you didn't opt in and you would like to, you can visit this short URL here and sign up. We ask, I think only name and email is mandatory. Everything else is optional. You do have to double opt in to confirm you're not a robot and to confirm that you really do want to subscribe. But from there, we only send 2 pretty short emails a month, and it's a nice overview of a lot of different opportunities. If you're interested in a specific country, as I see in the chat, many people are, Derry and I are slowly building country resource pages where we gather a lot of the national portals, but then also information on those European diaspora networks, as well as national funding opportunities. So we, as EURAXESS, promote the European Union's funding and collaboration opportunities, whether or not funding is involved, any collaboration. But that said, basically every country in Europe has its own funding agency, which they promote widely. So as part of this concept of adding many tools to your toolbox to supplement the main tool of EURAXESS, we can point you in the direction of what those national funding agencies and resources are. If you're interested in Pillar 2, again, those top-down open calls for international research consortia for principal investigators, the EU hosts, some of these are in person in Europe, but a lot of them are online. The time zone difference isn't always great with us on the East Coast, but they call them info days and brokerage events. And I say this just to give you a bit of an orientation in case you see these promoted on the European Commission websites. The info days are basically extremely detailed promotional online events about specific calls and specific clusters within Pillar 2 of Horizon Europe. And the brokerage events it's another term for sort of matchmaking and networking events. So this is where you can join an online platform, including if the time zone difference doesn't work for us on the East Coast. Oftentimes they use interactive online platforms where you can upload your sort of pitch and what research topic you have and what you want to do as part of the consortium. And the people meeting live will still follow your presentation and be in touch with you afterwards. So there is some asynchronous networking that you can engage in as part of these brokerage events. We, as EURAXESS North America, will post information on these on our events portal. We don't host sort of info days in the same way that the European Commission does or brokerage events. We do a lot of similar things that are more focused on our time zones and information sharing. But that said, if you have any questions about these, if you want to find out more, please do send us a message. I will share some quick resources here. One is our homepage, is EURAXESS North America. Another is the European Commission's FTOP, Funding and Tender Opportunities portal. It's quite a long URL, and once you click that, you'll have to specifically click a subsection that says Horizon, and then click a button that says View. If you don't type in a search term and you click View, it'll show you all the currently open calls, the forthcoming calls, and then there's a toggle to even see closed calls, just for reference. This is where, for example, if you're interested in Pillar 2 and joining international consortia, you can register your interest and your expertise, basically building a network so that you can apply together, or search others who have registered their interest, and also just view all of these individual opportunities one by one. You can search for keywords, you can filter, it's quite detailed. Beyond that, you have what's called Quartus. This is a database of all EU-funded projects since 1990. So this is where, for example, if you're interested in finding US-based participants who have joined on any of these funding schemes or programs, you can literally type in United States, type in certain criteria, you can type in University of Connecticut in quotation marks, and you could see the past any past researchers that have been involved. For privacy purposes and GDPR sort of related mentalities, you could say, the actual PI's names are not available. Sometimes it'll just be the university or an office or department name. But that said, there's ways where you can search the project name itself and perhaps find publications online about it. And it won't be clickable while I'm sharing my screen, and none of these links, of course, but when you access the PDF version, this will take you to a very long link of the Horizon Europe national contact points. It's where you can filter by funding scheme or cluster, and then country. So it's where you can find Dutch, European Research Council grants, national contact points, and get some information specific to your interests. There's a few things. There's information on the U.S. National Science Foundation's funding for certain ERC-related programs. when you access the PDF, you can click the co-funding mechanism, and the link should jump you to page 19 right away, but that's where you can find it if it doesn't. And then there's a very short, pithy, and informative 3-page guide the EU made called How and Why to Participate in Horizon Europe. I would encourage you to check that out. One additional resource are Jean Monnet Centers of Excellence. There's something called Jean Monnet Actions that provide funding for institutions inside and outside of Europe to promote excellence in teaching in the field of European studies. So at a lot of universities, for example, their centers for European studies throughout the US, you'll find that they are currently Jean Monnet chairs and centers of excellence, and they know EU funding well. So in addition to using us as EURAXESS, you're invited to go on the different EU websites and then find which these universities are. So if you're ever visiting campus for a talk or to meet with colleagues, they will be able to provide you some additional information. So as we start to wrap up, I'll just say that I'll remind you that what we do is we link you as a researcher at UConn to Europe, whether you want to go there or not. We provide information on European funding opportunities. We're quite active on social media. We're constantly hosting and joining webinars. And those twice monthly flash note emails will have a chock full of information on these different categories. And finally, we support your research career development. So if you're not interested in traveling elsewhere and you want to stay put, but there is some European component you're interested in, we support you in that career development. So my colleague Daria is in attendance. She and I are both the regional coordinators here at the North America Hub. This email address will go to both of us. You can just search EURAXESS North America on any of the social media platforms and you'll find us. We record almost all of our webinars and some of our in-person events. So you'll find a wealth of these on our YouTube channel. And again, if you missed any of the earlier opportunities to sign up for our flash notes, that QR code will take you there. But from there, with whatever time I have remaining, I'm extremely happy to make this more of a conversation, take your questions, and then commit to, if I can't give you an answer right away, continuing the conversation by email afterwards so we can. So I'd like to thank Zoe and Kay for graciously hosting me and doing all the logistics of setting up this event. And here saying thank you so much for the opportunity. Please do visit your EURAXESS North America website and be in touch with Daria and I so we can give you information. And thank you again to the University of Connecticut for hosting me. So.